So shall I start?
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead, please.
A very good morning, good evening to all. I am Dr. Usha Jain, Faculty of Department of Computer Science and Engineering, AI and ML and Cyber Security, Jain Deemed to be University. I am here to welcome you today's Industry Connect session. Today's Industry Connect session is on computer forensics, and we have a very distinguished guest speaker, Mr. Nadeem Nazeeb, working as a product security specialist at Philips Healthcare. He has earned his bachelor degree in information security from University of Kerala, Kerala, and completed his master degree from University of Madras, Chennai. Mr. Nazeem is certified information. Mr. Nazeem, am I audible, sir?
Yes, you are audible. Please go
Yeah.
ahead.
Yeah. Mr. Nazeem is certified information system security professional as he worked in many MNCs like KPMG and Cognizant. He has extensive experience in the field of business development, business analyst. Sir, on behalf of Jan Deem to be University family, I would like to extend a warm welcome to you, sir, and would like to thank you for taking out your precious time to spend with us. Our today's audience is BTech student, BTech student, cybersecurity student, as well as our faculty members at the same department. I would like to invite Mr. Nadeem Nazeeb sir to give us insight about the topic, also having such great experience in IT industry. I would request sir to share experience with all of us. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Usha ma'am, for the warm welcome and the introduction. It was nice also and a privilege for me to give a session on behalf of the Jain University and the people who are part of this forum. Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you. Thank you, sir.
So,
Welcome, sir.
yeah. So as Usama mentioned, I'm working with Philips Healthcare and I have close to 7 years of experience in the industry. And I hold certifications like certified information system security professional and certified ethical hacking. And my background, I started as a business analyst and later moved into the information security space from the identity and access management domain, then moved to the application domain, application security domain. Then in terms of my background in education, I did BTech as you guys in the undergraduate program, and later I did masters in the cyber forensic space from the University of Madras. So today I'm going to give you a very basic as well as like an essence to the introduction of computer forensics or digital forensics. Let me present you my screen. Yeah.
Nadeem, sir, sorry to interrupt you. Your video is off.
Okay. Do you want me to come in the video?
Yeah, that will be great. Students will be.
Yeah, absolutely fine. No problem. Okay.
Thank
Let
you.
me present
Thanks.
you my screen. Yeah. So just let me know everybody can see my screen.
We can.
Thanks for that confirmation. Okay. 1 second. Okay, so our topic for the day is computer forensics. So might be you guys are aware of what basic forensics is. So in movies and in newspapers, we used to hear this term, right? Forensics. The forensics investigator came. They did the preliminary investigation kind of things. Okay, so forensics is basically a field or a branch of science which deals with analysis, preservation, and presenting those findings to the investigators for helping them to understand what has actually happened. Okay, so when it comes to the computer forensics, normally we say that in four terms: the identification, collection, examination, and analysis of data. So in the digital or the computer world, we deals with the data, right? So the forensics basically is the identification of data, collection of data, examination of data, and analysis of data. When we would do these kinds of things, if something goes wrong, right? So when an attack happens or when an incident happens, then we will do a digital forensics. Okay, so the main important aspects of digital forensics, or the important fact to be considered while doing a digital forensics, is to preserve the integrity of the information. Why I would say integrity, in the cybersecurity space, integrity is the second leg, or you can say it is one of the legs in the CIA, confidentiality, integrity, and availability factor, right? Which forms the basics of the cybersecurity. So while doing an investigation, we have to make the integrity of that data. We have to preserve the integrity of the data, and we have to maintain a strict chain of custody. So these are the jargons I'll explain you once we progress. So for the initial information, any investigation we do as part of the digital forensics has to be done in such a way that the data should not get tampered. Okay, and also whatever we collect, analyze, and examine, all these things has to be maintained as a chain of custody, which is basically a process by the investigator used to do the step by step, or the procedures investigators used to do to achieve the highest result. Okay, so why we need to do digital forensics, or what is the goal of it? So in the today's world, digital forensics is not only restricted to the cyber crimes or the digital crimes. It is used as a part of troubleshooting various IT infrastructures or IT requirements. Also, it is used as part of a monitoring. So to support that monitoring fact, we have security operations center in different organizations. So they use multiple tools like the SIEMs or any log analyzer tools to identify any malware or attackers possibly happen or has happened. And also it is used as a part of the recovery process. If something goes wrong or a catastrophe, that time digital forensics comes into the place to support the recovery of the incident. And also it is used to protect the sensitive data. So whatever happens in an incident or a attack, cyber attack happens, so immediately the digital forensics team or the incident responders, basically, they come and they try to preserve the data from further being attacked. So we'll go into that steps in the approaching slides, so you will be coming to know about it. Okay, so from a high level we can say that digital forensics or cyber forensics is used in a place where an incident, attack, or a crime has happened, and those evidence has to be collected to substantiate the attack or a incident or a cyber crime in the court of law. So we have to produce certain artifacts or certain evidences to the court of law or the concerned authority. There we use the field of science called the digital forensics. Okay, so in this session I'll be interchanging the terms, basically computer forensics, digital forensics, even cyber forensics. All these are a variant or a kind of terms which we can interchange. There are specific meanings, but basically the digital forensics and the computer forensics is one. Okay, so never get confused in that terminologies. Okay, So why computer forensics is used? So as I mentioned in a high level, we use computer forensics for understanding the cyber crimes, for monitoring all these things. So if we come into specific points, so we use this cyber forensics or the digital forensics to identify any malicious code is present in our computer. So you guys have heard about the ransomware attack recently happened like 2 to 3 years back, and every organization has to pay a huge ransom who got affected with such kind of attacks. Okay, so how they identify we are being hacked or the data has been breached? So they use the experts from the industry who are very well equipped with the computer forensics process, and they have the technology to identify. So that people, they come and they do a analysis of the networks and the computers they have, and they identify whether any trace of malicious code is present in their network or in the systems. Okay, so the other part is the unauthorized access. So in during a cyber crime or a hack happens, so basically the computer forensics people can understand from the log files or the computer system generated logs as well as the system registry files that somebody who is without the authorization has accessed the systems. And also denial of service, which is part of the chain of attack, happened from an unauthorized access where the devices or the services are unavailable to the end users. So that kind of attacks or the cyber crimes we can identify with the help of a cyber forensics. Then again, misuse of resource, espionage, hoax, all these kind of like the malicious activities, right? So these kind of activities can be easily be traced with the help of a digital forensics. Okay, just like the analogy of a crime scene which we find in our day-to-day life, the investigators, they come, they put kind of powder and find the fingerprints of the culprit. Those kind of things we can tie it to the computer forensics. If you say an example of the real world, it has to be linked to that. Then different kinds of cyber crime, normally we see as the use of unwanted contents or spreading of child pornography, all these things. Then breach of computer security, like taking data from corporations or big companies and targeting themselves to get the ransom out of it. Then fraud or theft, copyright violations, basically like we download the files and movies, all these things from the internet which has copyright protections. Identify theft and narcotic investigation. So in the deep dark web and all, these people, they use the cyber computer world to sell all these things, right? The narcotics investigation, all these things can be found from the dark webs and all through cyber forensics, and it is a part of a cyber crime as well. Then any kind of like threat or sexual assault or stalking, all these comes under the cyber crime. So before we going deep into the characteristics of computer forensics, how many of you are aware about any tools, or have you guys done any projects or something in the cyber forensics? Or have you heard of any tools in the cyber forensic space? It's fine. You can say, you can unmute yourself and say any tools if you are aware.
Guidera or
Yep.
uh, process monitor or tools such as those.
Correct.
Autospy tools like
Yes, autopsy. Correct.
Explorer, PPE.
Correct.
Jardex.
Yes. Good guys. Good. Good to hear such good responses. Yeah. Okay, let's go into the characteristics of computer forensics. So as I mentioned, computer forensics life cycle has four major phases. So that one are like identifying, preserving, analyzing, and presenting, right? So what happens basically, when a crime happens, the investigators first comes to the crime scene, and they do these four steps to produce their results, or the research part, and they come up with the results. Okay, so the first part they do is the identifying. So the identifying means, so basically, suppose you think that in your computer lab somebody did a malicious activity, okay, and the management has decided to do a computer forensics. So the investigators come. The first step is identifying the surrounding. Okay, so they will look at the computer and the surrounding from a different angle to ensure or to get some answers to the questions like how did he access the system, like is there any physical security was there previously, or the computer was having a password. Okay, how could we get into the lab? All these kinds of things comes under the identification. So identification means they try to achieve what evidence is present, okay, where it is stored, and how it is stored. Okay, so as I take the example of the computer, in the first step, they understood that this particular PC is used for the malicious activity by understanding the IP address assigned to that particular machine. Okay, then they will install, or maybe they will connect a parallel system to the network to identify what data are present in that system, what evidence, basically what evidence is present, and how it is stored in that system. Okay, and which formats are they, or whether it is a persistent data or a volatile data. All these kinds of things can be understand from the step called identifying, the first step. In the second step, so they have done the initial part of the assessment, like identifying all these things which I mentioned. Then in the second part, what they do is they have to contain this evidence or the assets which they perform the investigation. So basically containing mean we have to isolate that data or the system from the network to make it ensure that it should not be further being attacked. Okay, so we have to preserve the integrity of the data. So we have to use different steps like disconnecting that device from the network, making it completely isolated, covering it with Faraday's cage and all, to ensure that some other uh, races like my electromagnetic races would not tamper the data. All these things has to be done in the preserving phase. So if you have seen in the movies, the investigators, they come to the crime scene, then they do a lot of things like using the magnifying glass, all these things. Then they will find evidences like they find some guns, they find some a knife or something which is used in the crime scene, and whatever they do is next step as to preserve them, right? They keep in a polythene kind of bag which is airtight containers. Then that kind of thing we used to do in the preserving of the computer forensics. So we cannot take the data in hand, so we use multiple methods like copying the bit to bit data into a new hard disk, which is free of like certain electromagnetic remnants and other external factors. Okay, then the next step is analyzing. So they take all these things from the crime site and they go to their labs. Then they started investigation on these things. So investigation means again they are trying to reproduce. Okay, they are trying to reproduce how the attack has happened. Okay, how things has gone wrong. All these kinds of things they try to analyze in the lab, and based on the analysis they will understand that okay, what has actually happened. Okay, the logs, all these things they try to reproduce, and they come up with a presentation where they summarize all the things like what they have done in the crime site, what they have done in the lab, and what is the conclusion, how they have come into the conclusion like this is the attack happened, or this is the kind of like the cyber crime which has happened to the system. Okay, so it is the life cycle of a computer forensics or a digital forensics, that these four steps: the identifying, then preserving, then analyzing, and presenting it. Okay, so let's move to the different types of digital forensics. Just give me a moment. Okay, so as I mentioned, the incident responders or the investigation people, first they comes into the crime site, then the next thing is they start doing all the four activities which I mentioned, those four steps. Okay, so where do they do all these things? That is the second part of it. Okay, so we have different types of forensics. Like one is the disk forensic, where the investigators deals with the entire disk by copying or archiving those data from byte to byte, and they will find which are the files which are modified by checking these checksum of that files, and they will try to recover the deleted files. All these things are happening in a duplicate disk, not in the evidence disk. Okay, that is the main part of the digital forensics, or any forensics activity. They won't do these activities, the four steps, on the evidence itself. They replicate the evidence as it is, and then they will process those things. Okay, then in the network forensics means it is identifying the activities that happened on the network. So in a network level, like they check the routers, the traffic, they collect data. So you might be knowing about some tool called Wireshark, Burpsuit, and all. So what happened is they are like interceptors, or they analyze, they sniff the traffic, right? So they use such kind of tools analyzing the logs, traffics, and all to identify what has happened in the network level. Okay, then in the wireless forensics, basically if these computers are connected to the wireless network, then they create a wireless network on top of it, and they try to understand what protocols they used, how the data is being passed, and where the logs are stored. All these kind of things they do on the wireless forensics. In the database part, exclusively how the data is stored, the structure of the data, that is metadata. Okay, then is there any logs related to the deletion, modification of the evidences? All these things can be extracted from with the help of tools like NCase and all, to identify from a database, from a forensics point of view. Okay, malware forensics, as I mentioned, will check in the network, the systems, and all to identify the traces of malware components in the network. Then email forensics is basically like you might have heard that police or the cyber forensics people, or the cyber security people, um, they have uh, they have basically explored the, or exploited the emails, and identified this communication happened. So there are techniques for that also, like reading the deleted emails, then trying to recover those emails, then they can create a pattern of like how the emails has been sent. All these things can be done in the email forensics. In the memory forensics, as I mentioned, in the crime side, if the computer which the attacker or the culprit who used and did the malicious activity, if it is open, then we can do a memory forensics, which basically means like taking the contents in the RAM and extracting that to a different machine and identifying what data is being present in the RAM. So that is called as a RAM dump. Okay, then mobile forensics, as you know that people can identify certain kind of things from the mobile itself, right? Like contact logs, then call logs, incoming, outgoing, all these things can be done from the mobile forensics as well. Okay, so these are kind of like the different types of forensics available to come to a conclusion regarding the evidences. Okay, so we talked about evidences a lot. Okay, right? So now we need to know what is a digital evidence exactly. Okay, so as I mentioned, the term digital represents the data mostly. Okay, so any data that is recorded or preserved in the computer or any systems, whether it's hard disk computer or anywhere, that can be understood by a person, then that kind of data qualifies for a digital evidence. Okay, so it is kind of like our fingerprint, okay, or a DNA. So this has to be actually certain things we have to be follow while doing the digital evidence, while preserving the digital evidence is basically the digital evidence is very fragile, and we have to handle it very very careful, because these digital evidences or the digital, basically the data is forms of zeros and one, right? Any change in this will literally change the whole context of the data itself. Okay, and also it can be a time sensitive material, because at some point of time the data has been generated like in a format, and sometimes we need to reproduce that data and it won't come in that way. So it is also a time sensitive fact as well. So this is a high level understanding of digital evidence. Now we comes to the point of digital types of the digital evidence. As I mentioned, the data can be either in two forms, right? One is the data in motion, the other one is the data at rest. Okay, so the first point here mentioned is the persistent data. Persistent data basically means the data which resides in the hard disk or any other storage media, and it remains as it is even though the computer or the device gets power off. Okay, so it is a kind of like a permanent data, okay, which we can erase later, but whatever the format we saved, it remains as it is. Okay, the second part is the volatile data. Basically volatile data means, as we know, volatile means kind of like um, the data won't exist, or the data won't stay for a longer time, right? It's a temporary data. So whatever data we store in the RAM or any components which uses the data, which uses the data while it is in process, that is called as a volatile data. Okay, basically if we switch off the device, or a power failure could have lost that data. Okay, so for example, uh, contents like deleted files, then certain parts of the computer registry, then temporary files, sometimes web browsing history which we have enabled not to store the history, then all these kinds of thing qualifies for a volatile data. Basically the data stored in the RAM is a best example of a volatile data. So for these kinds of data, different methods has been used to perform the forensics, digital forensics. Okay, now we are going to the computer forensics methodology, or basically how an investigator approaches the um, computer or a device which is found at the crime site. Okay, so the first step is the shut down the computer. So this scenario I'll tell you. Okay, this I mentioned in a very high level, shut down the computer, which basically means that after identifying all the assets or all the evidences, all the equipments, or the all the artifacts from the crime site, the second step is to isolate the computer, right, or isolate the device from the network, so that further attacks would not be happen. So in that perspective we can say that shut down the device. Otherwise, if you have, if you become a investigator later on a time, and if you're going to a crime site, the first step, you may remember that I told you shut down the computer. It is not the right one. Okay, here shut down the computer means after you taking all the RAM dump all the data or the bit by bit data to the different system, then we can isolate that system by shutting it down. Okay, because we may have to carry that device to our network, or our, sorry, we have to carry that to the our lab for performing the multiple analysis activities. So that time we can shut down the computer. Okay, then document the hardware configuration of the system. Basically, in the analysis phase or in the identification phase itself, we have to we have to write as a note what are the configuration of the system, then any passwords or any uh, inputs we basically we have to provide to open or access those files or the configurations of the system. Those things has to be well documented in a file or a digital system. Okay, then transport the computer system to a secure location. So we have to move that systems to our lab. So how we move, we have to protect those devices with the help of Faraday cage or any other electromagnetic sensitive coating layers to ensure that the data would not be get tampered, right? Okay, then the fourth step is the make bitstream backups of hard disks. Okay, so while we started doing the forensics part, as I mentioned, we don't work on the proper evidence or the true evidence, right? We'll take a copy of it. So just copying data from a pen drive or copying it to another computer doesn't gives the exact evidences. So they use different tools that connects to the system and takes bit by bit backup, basically bitstream backups of the hard disk, and they replicate that in a new hard disk exactly like whichever spaces there, deleted files, all these things has to be taken in a different storage media, and they do the um, activities, forensics activities. Mathematically verify data on all storage devices basically means there is a concept of checksum. So the concept is like if you have modified or if you have developed any file, the operating system itself create a checksum for it. Okay, it is to ensure that the integrity of the file. So the file, if you transfer from one device to another, the checksum remains the same unless and until the file gets tampered. Okay, so these people, what they do, the investigators, they before they starting their analysis phase, they check all the checksums of the file from the true evidence or the from the evidence to the copied location is same. Okay, then they document the system date and time. So basically analyzing the logs and all, uh, we keep the system date and time as a factor, right? So we need to understand in what time or which date the particular attack has happened. Okay, then the other thing is make a list of key search words. So as I said, in a cyber crime, we have to take a lot of data. Okay, so we have to make an index of those data so that we can search those things, and we can get the things in a quicker pace. Okay, then evaluate the Windows app file, which is basically once you copy all the files from the Windows to other Windows, other laptop or a device, we have to ensure that all the files are copied and it has swapped basically. Then evaluate files like again, as I mentioned, the checksum, the format of the files, all these things are the same as from the evidence. Okay, evaluate unallocated spaces, then the same things like document details, then program name, all these things has come into the right format. All these things has to be ensured while we do a forensics. Okay, so now we understood what is digital forensics, and in a very high level how the investigators perform all these steps. Okay, now why we need to do, or what are the advantages of adding digital forensics into the organization or why we need digital organization forensics basically in the real world. Okay, some advantages of it. It is to ensure the overall integrity of the organization. Okay, in terms of any attack or anything they want to show that it has not done from our side. So those things can be achieved through the digital forensics. That is one of the advantage. Then help the organization to capture important information of their systems and networks, right? So with the help of this forensics we can capture the sensitive data and we can put controls around it. Then efficiently tracks down cyber criminals and terrorist activities from the different parts of the world. Okay, it is kind of like a monitoring activity, a proactive step. Then tracks complicated case such as child pornography and email spamming. So we might have heard of like from this country's spamming emails has come to our PM and all. Then they took the action. So how do they know from where these emails are originated, who has actually sent and all? These can be made with the help of the forensics. Okay. Some disadvantages is like it is very costly process. The tools which I mentioned also like NCase, autopsy, all these things are very costly, and it costs, the licenses cost itself like 40 lakhs 50 lakhs kind of thing. So it is one way the costly deal. Then we need to have multiple storage space or more storage space to do all these activities. Again, it ties up to the um, cost factor. Then new technologies, we have to go with the pace of the cyber crime, so that only we can find the latest attacks or activities happening. Then anti forensics means basically there would be certain clause or conditions in the contract that anti forensics or any kind of malicious activity should not be performed on the vendor sites. Suppose we are taking the service from AWS or Azure, we should not do any forensics activities on their network without informing them or getting their prior approval. All these things matters. Then legal issues, certain countries they restrict kind of activities like this. Okay, so that some secret things happening in the government cannot be revealed. So such legal issues and issues related to the privacy aspects as well comes into the picture. Then administrative issues, as I mentioned, if you want to set up a uh, cyber forensics or a lab in the organization or wherever, we have to invest a lot, and we have to find the right people to do the analysis, because these tools are one medium only, but the right skill set is what required in the industry. So that is an administrative or basically a capital expense part. Then as I mentioned, few tools which you might have heard. For disk forensics, basically we use NCase, then autopsy. Then image creation, we use FTK imager. So image means basically in forensics taking the exact copy of the file or exact copy of the disk. Okay. Then memory forensics means as I mentioned, taking the data. So there's a tool called volatility, so you can use that tool to take the RAM dump out of it. Okay. Then Windows registry, the basic Windows registry recon tools are there. Then mobile forensics, some tools like Celebrite, UFED, all these tools are available. Then network analysis, free of cost tool. You can even download in your computer, and you can start doing some kind of network analysis, like you might have learned in the previous chapters or courses, like the um, TCP/IP model, right? All these things you can see in the real world using this Wireshark. Then Linux distribution, Kane, which can be used for the cyber forensics activities as well. So here ends my session. So I thought to show a demo of how we can actually store or data within a picture, basically. But the tool was not working in my system, so I'll show you how is steganography, the term of hiding something inside a picture, some data inside a picture, some secrets inside a picture is called steganography. Okay, so there is one tool called S tool, basically the steganography tool. Just give me a moment. Okay, so there is a tool called steganography tool, S tool, basically. So you can download freely it from the internet. And suppose and so sorry for this. Okay, so basically, how does a forensic investigator basically once they do the forensics, how do they ensure that this technography kind of things are not happen? So they can use this tool, S tools, okay, S tools, to identify whether any picture they got it from the their PC or a laptop is not holding any kind of data. Okay, or basically the attackers, how they communicate each other is through steganography only. They will randomly send some files, instead of sending files they randomly send pictures. The normal people who sees that email doesn't get like what they have sent. If we see, then we think that okay, they randomly send some pics to the sender to the destination, but these pictures may hold certain kind of very confidential data. So how they prepare those things is with the help of this technography tool. Okay, this is freely available, you guys can create it. So how create this technography file is, first we have to launch this tool. We can download it from internet. Just click on the tool itself, the file itself, it will open. Then what we can do is just drag and drop any file. So here they took the example of one picture. Okay, they just drag and drop any file into that first. Okay, basically the picture. Then again you have to drag and drop any files into this picture. Okay, so that that data can be hidden inside the pixels of this picture. Okay, now you can use a passphrase or a basic encryption which are mentioned here, and you can encrypt that picture. Okay, and you can send it to the corresponding person, okay, the destination, so that the person who receives this will see this picture only. But if he has to get the data, then he has to actually decode it. Okay, there's another method like revealing the archive data. Okay, he can just download this image in the his laptop or a PC, then he can decode it and he can see the information. So it is kind of like a tricking the person or a investigator from revealing basically the data is, and it's kind of like a secure mechanism of sending confidential information. Okay, so I tried to explain this with the help of a lab, but unfortunately it was not working. So you guys can check in your laptops and you can try something like sending the files and all to your friends. Okay, so here ends my session on digital forensics. Any questions or any concerns you have, you can freely raise. I'm happy to help you.
Sir, if I have to ever, like, for a demonstration purpose or for any other thing, I want to store a particular string of data inside my image for a bug
Mhm.
bounty kind of thing. Even if there's a method we can get a reverse shell while actually embedding code inside an image and uploading the image.
Correct.
So how can I do that with steganography? Is there a
Okay,
specific?
you can, yeah, you can take this tool as a medium of inputting a data into the picture or a file. You cannot do that. Steganography basically means the hiding data inside the picture only. So as I
Yeah, in
understood,
the
you
metadata, I
try
can
to bypass the
actually add
file
that.
upload vulnerabilities, right? Or a image upload vulnerabilities, right?
I tried it using with EXIF tool. You can actually have
Okay.
an MD5 sum inside an image, which
Mm-hmm.
is indetectable by any other presently available software. As of now, I don't know it got detected, but
Mm-hmm.
I tried it once with some known website for a bug bounty, but it did not work. So I just thought that I did something mistake.
Okay. Nice. You can even try with multiple tools. Yeah, sometimes this works, sometimes it may not work, but you can still try with multiple tools. Yeah. This tool is very basic tool. I don't suggest, but there are advanced versions. But for the learning purpose only, you can use these kind of tools.
Okay, sir.
Any other concerns? Just give me a moment. I'm back. Any other questions you have? If everyone is clear. Sorry, Usha ma'am, I was speaking in mute.
Sir, now it's audible?
Yes, yes, it is audible.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. I think no one has any query now. So,
Okay, thank you so much. Then
yeah,
I wish everyone a happy New Year and a happy Christmas, and
thank you,
all
sir.
the best for your future
Yeah.
endeavors as well.
Thank you, sir, for your enlightening session. I am sure everyone present here really valued knowledge you shared and are the most appreciative of this session. Sir, now on this note, we have entered the final moment of our session where I feel privileged to propose a vote of thanks. First of all, I would like to thank our Department of Computer Science and Engineering, Artificial Intelligence and Machine Learning, and Cybersecurity, and Futurance Technology to conduct a wonderful event of Industry Connect, where our students with faculty members are fortunate to connect with eminent industry experts of various domains. On behalf of Department of Computer Science and Engineering, Jain deemed to be university, and all students, I extend my hearty vote of thanks to Mr. Nadeem Nazib to accept our invitation and refurbishing our students with best possible and upgraded education. I must mention a deep sense of appreciation to our HOD, Dr. V. Vivek, for his constant support and motivation. I sincerely thank our team of very motivated and hardworking faculty members to join this session. Finally, I would like to thank our students for paying their valuable attention. Once again, I would like to thank you all for joining the session. Thank you very much, sir.